Okay, I'm going to start singing now.
Yay.
Boards. Board games, board games, it's what we're talking about. Board games, I'm not gonna shout. Here I am today with Antoinette.
Yay.
Board game chat is what you're gonna get. I met Antoinette 2.5 years, about 2 years ago in
Yeah.
Essen, when Antoinette, she was rushing around the stalls because there is a lot of games that you might want to get got. Board games, it's what we're talking about.
Woo.
Board games, I'm not gonna shout.
Yeah.
Today we're talking about the obligations of reviews and what you do in situations when you've decided to review a name, when you have to stand up with it with your name. Board game reviews is what we're talking about. Board game reviews, we're not gonna shout. Hey,
Woo. That was
hello,
fantastic.
thank you very much.
Oh, marvelous. Oh.
And hello, Sate, it is lovely to see you. And Oliver, excellent to see you.
Oliver.
And yes, it
Yes.
is Friday. And good morning, Alan Houghton. And or good day. I think let's although like it's this thing where sometimes we have people on where it's evening for them, and it's how do you say it's like wherever you're watching, good morning, good evening, good night, good day, good whatever time it is. I hope it is a good period.
Mm.
And hello, Prey. It is lovely to see you as well. Um, Now, I am Bez, and in some countries it's bedtime, which is why this is the Bezzy Bedtime Board Game Bladder. And today we are going to be talking about a reviewer's obligations with the lovely, fantastic Antoinette Mason.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Bez. It's very exciting to be on your show with all your illustrious guests and whatnot, and then me. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this. This should be exciting.
And I like this good time zone adjusted time instead of good morning or good evening. And yeah, this is really been a big topic. I think that obviously there's been a little bit of chatter with certain publishers maybe saying, hey, get this review out in a certain amount of time, and maybe that's fine, but you need to be clear, you need to make sure that it's fair to everyone. There's so many, like, in a minute, if you had to, what, like, do you think that this is why did you want to talk about this? Why did you even agree to talk about this, Antoinette? Why did you agree to come on this show?
Well, firstly, because you're lovely, and I thought it would be really fun to
Aww.
have a chat with you in the morning. But second of all, I think people talk a lot about board game reviewers and what it is they're doing, or kind of, I guess, the ideals behind what they're doing as well, and their relationship with publishers is something that comes up quite a bit in the board game community. So I think it's something I think more people need to talk about, or possibly even want to hear about. So yeah, so that's why I agreed to have this chat. We'll see if I say anything of use, of course. So yeah. Oh, I can't hear you, Bess. Oh,
Oops, sorry about that. I muted
got
myself for drinking water. So you know what? I should probably just start muting myself, and people can deal with my with that tiny bits of noise as I put the bottle down, because it is only plastic. But then not forget to mute myself, because it's just another thing to remember. Anyway, back to the point. I was saying to Nick Welford that this is not meant to be like the final words on this. I think
Yeah.
that this is just us opening up the conversation, hopefully giving some food for thought. But
Hmm.
we're not just here to talk about board games, are we? We're also here to talk about brilliant things. Brilliant things.
Yay!
What's a little thing which is brilliant?
Brilliant. There are so many brilliant things, but I'm going to pick Post because Post is definitely very brilliant, and you did just get a lovely delivery in Post. Look at this, live unboxings. Woo.
And I am. Oh, this is exciting. Oh, this is from Talita, I believe. Oh, it's like in a little folio. Oh, there's a lovely little envelope that's got. And that's an interesting font choice, let's say.
Oh, yeah. It's like the curly font.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So this is some prints and play cards and that Talita's made up and some wee stickers.
Oh, that's
these
lovely,
are really pretty stickers that they've got some done. So this is for their game, Doggo Dash.
Oh, that's cute. Really, really cute.
This is a game, I think it's meant to be for, it's like a party game, I think for about 2 to 6, something like that. I can't remember. But I will check that out later and put that to the side.
What a great way to start your Friday morning.
And I've also got this box, which has, I tore my address out of so no one gets to see it.
Smart move.
Otherwise, you know, I do need some sorts of blade for this. And I could go to the kitchen and get a knife, but instead I'm just going to, you know what?
You can just use your raw strength and bend the cardboard out if you don't need the box. Just dig your way in. Yeah.
Let's see if I can do it.
I have a habit of needing to keep the boxes, so I can't just tear them open like I would like.
Why do you have... Oh, yeah, because you're actually doing unboxings with the things. Ooh.
Well, but also I trade a lot of board games.
So excellent. Boxes. This is a game that I bought. So people will know that I quite enjoy Energy Empire, okay?
Oh, I love Energy Empire.
I bought the original version, which is the Manhattan Project. So I'll hopefully be playing this with my friend Layla later on. So this says 120 minutes. And so, yeah, the reason that I got this was because I was quite excited by the espionage mechanism. I don't know if you know anything about that. So in both of those games, you're building, it's like a worker placement game, but you're also building up your own tableau. You've got all these other places to build stuff on. But in Manhattan Project, I've not played it, but apparently you've got the chance to go off and block other people. So you pay money to go into what they thought was their bit. And so it's really brutal and cutthroat. And I'm quite excited for that.
I didn't think that'd be your kind of play style. It's interesting to know that you're the one who wants to cut the other people off. We're always really friendly in our house. It's like, if you're playing a worker placement game, I'll be like, well, I want this spot, so you can have that one, so that we don't have to like meet or fight over things. And I know some people love that kind of interaction, but it's never appealed to me. I just want to play my game, do my thing. So I'm amazed that you want all that conflict. I love it. I love it. It's a whole dark side to you I didn't know existed.
I'm not look, I'm not cruel. Like, you know, I'm not going to deny you 10 points if I could get 12 points by some other means. But you know, if my choice is only to get 9 points or to deny you the 10 points, then I am going to, in a 2-player game at least, I am going to do that. And you know, I play to try to be vaguely optimal. And I feel like there's an assumption as we sit down to play the game that if we wanted to have a low interaction game, then we would have chosen a low interaction game. I'm not one of these people who plays Ticket to Ride and then says, okay, I'm never going to block anyone. I'm going to, you know, if you don't want to block people, if you want to have this as a house rule that you're not allowed to build a route unless it's something that you're going for, well, then I would be happy to implement that house rule as it starts. But once you've agreed to the rules of the game, I mean, don't get me wrong. Again, this is another really, really big topic, like the magic circle and the obligations of a player.
It's funny, like we'll play games nicely until one person, let's say, puts the one train out and ticket to ride that blocks everybody else, and then all the myths are off because that person looks like the asshole because they were the one who started it. So now we all have to pick on you because you did the mean thing, and then everyone goes mean. So it's like everyone's nice for a while, and then someone will break it, and then chaos will ensue. But you're right, you should play a game to be optimal, and some games do involve you having to interfere with others and their progression in the game and how they're going to win, and it's just, how they're built.
Yeah. I mean, games are built for a particular experience, and if you want to have a different experience, then you've got to change the rules of the game. Again, this gets into another really big topic, house rules. Feels like, but this was already a really big topic, reviewer's obligation, so let me try and speed on. To close out this section, Post is brilliant because today I've just had two delightful things. Like its surprises, but sometimes Post is a little bit boring. Do you not think, when it's just a bank statement or a... To be fair, I know some people only get their bank statements online, but Post, it's still quite nice to hear, especially when it's a handwritten thing. It's like someone cared enough to write it. And sometimes I like to even keep the envelopes because, that person's got really nice handwriting.
Oh, that's lovely. So cute. I just love Post because you don't know what's necessarily coming. So and there's the anticipation of knowing when the postman might arrive and bring things. And then, of course, there's what's actually inside the box. So me and my postman are best friends, and I know all of the DPD drivers and stuff by name because I get quite a number of deliveries. But I just love Post. I just think it's so exciting, and I always did, even as a kid. There's nothing nicer than getting something like a letter in the post or a card or something, and then
but if I started, let's say I started sending you really rubbish stuff, like let's say I started sending you dried up beans, imagine, and then so it was tiny little parcels. And maybe they're oversized, but each parcel or each big envelope just had one bean. Then maybe that would ruin Post for you. Mind, that would be really horrible. I'm not going to do that. But
I don't think you could ruin Post.
Isn't it just because you continually get nice stuff in the post that you enjoy Post?
Yeah, I think so, but it's just the excitement of the delivery. It's not necessarily what you get, but it's the fact that somebody came to your house and handed something to you that you are not entirely certain what it is. I think there's something about the uncertainty of Post that's very exciting. So there you go.
So maybe actually injecting those low lows, maybe what you need is a bit more of a gamble. Maybe you need someone like me to send you literally empty envelopes.
That would be super exciting.
And then one in 100 of these envelopes eventually is going to have something in it, but you'll never know which one.
That sounds like a lot of stamps.
Yeah, this sounds like it's going to be quite expensive for me. I'm not sure I'm down for this, to be honest.
I know. Yeah, it's a bit of a commitment, really.
Yeah. So let's move on to recent highlights. Highlights. Living life and seeing the sights, such as games. What are we playing? What are their names? Yesterday was Thursday. I don't think I played any games yesterday. I mean, it was just one day. It's fine. I mean, I played a bunch of games
one whole day.
Yeah, but my recent highlights was probably walking around and talking with Andrew Sheeran. I don't know if you know them. They made 10 Commandments and the War on Terror, and we're on friendly terms. Like, we are friends, I'm going to say. Like, I would just like to know them better. I've got their phone number, and I was like, hey, let's phone up this person, and then let's see how they're doing. And then we had a lovely half-hour chat as I walked around the field, talking, like, just catching up with how we've been doing the past couple of years, frankly. And so this is a new kind of tradition that I've had, that before the show we were talking about finishing work. I made sure, okay, it's 7:30. I'm not going to do any more work today. I'm just going to try and leave internet and everything until tomorrow morning. So yeah, I walked around, and that was a lovely thing. And also, yeah, the post was a recent highlight. I'm not going to lie.
Hey, Post.
How about you?
Okay, I'll talk about games because it's kind of what I do best, and my life is rather empty without them. So we'll start with I played Space Gate Odyssey at the weekend, and I forever get the name of that game wrong. I have to think about it really hard. And it's this really beautiful looking space game in which you are trying to move your meeples through your building and send them off to planets to get victory points. And I'd heard some interesting things about it, although the Dice Tower didn't give it a favorable review. So I picked it up while it was very, very cheap just to try out, and I was very pleasantly surprised. It was very unique. I've not seen a game before where you're moving something to somewhere else, and then you build kind of your base, and your meeples have to move through there to get to the teleporter to get down to the planet. So it was this kind of whole system going on there. I really liked the components as well. It had these teeny tiny meeples that got into teeny tiny exosuits. You put your meeples in them and they got even bigger. And you know what? I was very pleasantly surprised. It felt very unique and very fresh. So I'm looking forward to trying it out again. So that was a very pleasant surprise. So yeah, that's Space Gate Odyssey.
Space Gate Odyssey.
I love a bargain. I'm a big fan of board game bargains. So yeah, that's my recent highlight.
And Oliver's recent highlights was their latest podcast episode.
Yes.
Is that recording it or getting it out?
So Oliver and I make the Tabletop Inquisition podcast together. If you haven't heard of it yet, it's totally worth checking out because we're amazing. And our last episode, we did an thank you. We did an Agony Ants style episode, except for it was Agony board gamers. So people sent anonymous messages to us asking their board game problems, and then we attempted to answer them in our episode. So it was really, really exciting and really fun. I think it was just hilarious. So I hope more people go and listen to it and think we're also funny, because we sure think we're funny.
I tend to listen to podcasts in big chunks, if you know what I mean. So I will like I've just recently been listening to a lot of the one by Ignacy Jivacek and Stephen Bonacor.
Yes, I listened to that too.
And so I started listening to it about a month ago, and then I went back as far as you can, which is about a year and a half. And I'm almost caught up now. It started off really lovely, you know, with, these are lovely memories of times when you could go to conventions and stuff. And then it started getting, you know, real. And so it was a bit less fun. So I'm listening to it a bit less now. So then I went off and I listened to all of Mark Rosewater's things because I was about 16 shows behind with that. Mark Rosewater does 2 shows a week.
Wow.
Pretty prolific. And are the head designer of Magic, you know, the gatherings are pretty
awesome.
Hello, Jones Family Games Nights. It's lovely to see you. And also, hello, Alex. I didn't say hello, but hopefully do we. You know,
let's
I
wave
love
at everyone
Alex.
in general. Hello, everybody. In case I missed you by name.
And I was caught up to your thing in just before Aircon, and then I was caught up again at some points after Aircon, like maybe in April I was caught up, but then I got a lot of episodes since April. Whatever you done to catch up on? So that's reminded me I do really need to do that. So sorry.
Hey, it's only something to look forward to.
Yeah, exactly, and that brings us to the end of the show. But you know, it's not the end yet.
Not yet.
So questionably quick questions, and here. As always, I should have been more explicit with this. Everyone feel free to share your recent highlights. And at the end, I'm going to ask everyone to share their things they're looking forward to. But right now, everyone feel free to ask the questionably quick questions. And if I will be the one who pops them up on the screen. If there are super quick questions, we'll ask them now. If they're more on-topic questions, they will wait for about 5 minutes until the end of this section. So the first question, as always, is... Well, I say as always, but there's been at least one exception. Are you ready?
Yes. As ready as I'll ever be.
When did you wake up?
At 7:10 this morning.
What is your favourite meeple colour?
Red.
Good choice.
Red goes fastest.
Did you have breakfast?
Does coffee count? I'll count coffee for breakfast. Yeah, there you go. Coffee for breakfast.
So that brings me to hot coffee or iced tea.
Iced tea isn't really a thing here, so I'd probably go for hot coffee. That's much easier to obtain.
Okay, iced coffee or hot tea?
Hot tea. I'm making bad choices. This is tough.
So you basically want everything hot.
At the moment, yes. It's starting to feel like winter here, so it's like something
No, I
warm
can
today.
get that. It's like I'm
Yeah.
actually wearing a vest under this dress, so like just it's very summery. I just want to be like, yeah, it's still summer.
No, I'm half
What
in
do
my
you-
pajamas and no one's noticed yet. So,
Do you expect a delivery from the postman today?
interesting. I don't. I am tracking a parcel from Parcel Force. Apparently, it's landed in Ireland, but it hasn't gotten a truck yet. So I'm refreshing the website really often in the hope it gets here. But otherwise, no packages today.
We've got one question from Ian Sutton. Hi, Ian. Which is your preferred season or weather to walk along a beach?
Depths of winter, icy cold, lashings of rain, beach. And
Seriously?
I tell this story a lot because it's true. I love going to the beach when there's nobody there. And that's when you're most likely to have nobody there. So we normally go to the beach at like 6 a.m. on Christmas morning, like in the dark and the lashings of rain, because it's Ireland, and have the whole place to ourselves. And that is really, really special, I think. So I don't care about weather. I don't mind getting wet or windy or whatever it is, as long as you have the place to yourself. Important part.
What is your favorite month?
I'm going to go with December because my birthday's in December and it's coming up to Christmas. And there's always something cozy about the month of December compared to all the other months because there's lights up everywhere. It's dark outside, but everyone's kind of preparing for something nice.
What are your dogs called?
I have 2 dogs. They're boat rescue dogs. So one of them is Gypsy Danger. That's her full title after Pacific Rim. And I have a little whippet type dog called Ripley after Ripley from Aliens. So they needed powerful names for powerful dogs.
How much sleep do you get on average?
Oh, I'm one of those people that could sleep a lot, like really a lot. So I go to bed at like 9 o'clock at night and get up at 7 and I sleep the whole way through and sometimes have a nap during the day as well. So like way too much sleep, I think is probably the answer. Yeah, too much sleep.
We've got hello Maya, lovely to see you, who's asking what is the board behind you?
Okay, so this is my board game murder board, as I'm fondly calling it. And this is my attempt of kind of connecting different board games in different ways and looking kind of psychotic while I'm doing it, because I think that's what an Inquisitor is about. We're tracking down the next best board game and making links between them. So it needs a bit filling out. I'm working on it. If anyone has any suggestions on how to make it look better, I would love that. I'm not very arty. Oh, so it's the assembly coaster. Yes, that's right. It is from it is. That's the coaster from assembly. There's also, Bez, if you look very carefully, your own business card is on my board. It's above my little fireplace. See, that's your card from Essen way back.
Oh.
So, oh yeah, you can see it now. There's a couple of more. Name any games you can spot people. So yeah,
that could be a little game for everyone.
I like to have those kind of things. People are guessing. Connect all games with Meatballs with your bin. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, Alan is just totally anti Meatballs. We're not going, Alan.
We don't.
Someone spotted the mines.
The mines, that's right. Yeah, the mines there. There you go.
So, talking about Meatballs, what's your position? Wooden meatball or plastic figurine?
Oh, wooden meatball every time. Nothing beats the feel of a little wooden meatball. Yeah, no questions.
And what's a good thing to eat or drink whilst playing games? And water is totally legitimate choice.
I think mostly whatever you want. I find that most people who play games with us have enough cop on to not put like their greasy fingers on cards or things like that. Most people can't. I do have coasters at my table for when we play games because, our glasses get condensation-y on the outside. But I also have a game mat to play on and it would absorb water. So it was like, as I suddenly learned how to use coasters as a grown-up once we played more board games. So yeah, whatever you want, I think. Yeah, yes.
And yay for wooden. I absolutely agree.
Completely agree. There's a good feel to something wooden like that. You know, it's always very weighty and stuff in your hand too. Oh, chopsticks!
And
That's a great idea.
Talking about wooden things, no, Alan. Wood is reasonably good, but plastic is fantastic. I do like the rhyming there.
I like the rhyming too.
But so this is I'm just going to finish off. Unless anyone else has any quick questions that they want to ask, I'm going to finish off by asking your favourite board game shop that's closest to you. You can list a couple if you need to.
A couple? We don't have a couple.
So you live in Cork, right?
I do live in Cork, yes. So for some time there was a place called the Tabletop Cafe, and it was a board game cafe. So you could buy board games, you could play board games, they had really nice food. But COVID has shut them down because it was such a small premises. So I kind of lost my main game shop. But if I go further away, if I drive an hour or so, I get to a little shop in a place called Clonakilty, and it's right next to the beach. We used to go there, and I love how their name is completely escaping me right now, which is terrible. Give me like 2 minutes, I'll think of it. But it's this really small shop, and then there's just a big wall of a massive modern board games, like hidden behind the Playmobil figurines and the Lego, and it's an amazing place. And I'll think of the name in like 2 seconds. I promise. When I stop thinking about it, it will come to me, and I will tell everybody where they should go. Oh, what's it called? That's going to drive me nuts.
Casey, hello, Casey from Nigeria, is asking how cold is it at the beach at 6 a.m. I think this is a reference to what you were talking about earlier about when no one else is there.
So you know what? Not that. Like Ireland, yeah, we get a lot of rain and stuff like that, but it's not necessarily like misery cold. It would be very rare for us to get snow. Maybe we'll get a little bit of ice, but nothing like seriously cold. Nothing you couldn't stand at the beach anyway. Not like we're going swimming. So
I mean, at least you're able to, you're putting on, I assume, like boots and your warm jumper and a jacket.
You got to prepare yourself for these kinds of things. Put on all the wet gear, have a change of clothes in the car, and just go out and have fun, enjoy yourself. And then you come back, and on the way home, you'll have make a big fry up, an Irish fry for breakfast, a big pot of tea. Like, that's the life. That's what life is about, people.
Okay, I said I was going to stop the questionably quick questions, but I have to ask, what distinguishes an Irish fry up from a fry up?
Beans. Beans is what the English do. The English add beans to the fry up. That makes it different. Sometimes we'll have things like potato bread or stuff like that with it. But mostly they're very, very similar. Do you guys put black pudding on your fry up? Do you guys do black and white pudding?
You say you guys, but I've lived in London for 8 years, and I'm from up north. I'm from Glasgow in Scotland. So traditionally, Scottish fry up, it would be black pudding.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't know whether beans would be parts of it in Scotland. Okay. I'm not really one to go to a cafe and ask for an English fry up.
An English fry up.
I was just wondering whether there's a unique thing, because I think the black pudding sounds like in the UK, black pudding is Scotland, beans is England, and I mean Ireland. You're talking about the tatty scones, the potato scones. But that's Scotland as well.
That's Scotland as well. I think we have a lot in common food-wise, because black pudding's definitely kind of an Irishy thing anyway. But it's also a Scottish thing, so we've got our links there. And I'm really sorry. The name of the shop is Happy Go Lucky. If anyone ever is in the back arse Cork, heading for a day trip, that's where you want to go. It's a Happy Go Lucky. So there you go. I knew I would remember it eventually. I'm a terrible human being. So they're wonderful down there.
And we've got some people asking what is a fry up, and Alan flippantly says take lots of greasy foods and make them more greasy. And but Jones Family Games Night, where are you from? Jones Family Games Night, let us know so we can think about the locality.
Here we go.
We should do
tomatoes.
This on Twitter, sausage, fried beans, bacon, fried
tomato.
Fried tomato. I think that normally the eggs, potentially bacon, unless you're a vegan or vegetarian. Some sorts of sausage, potentially vegetarian sausage, is a traditional thing, and quite often a bit of toast on the side.
Oh yeah.
Ah,
Has to
they're
have
from
toast.
Hampshire. There you go.
Ah, there you go. No, like
Yeah,
our
that's why
fry-up-
there's the beans. Mm.
like the Irish fry-up is traditionally like sausage, rashers, which is bacon, eggs, and maybe some sort of potato. We used to do fried potato quite a bit. So you'd have potatoes left from your dinner the night before, from boiling potatoes, and then you fry them up with your breakfast. And beans and all that have crept into over time, but I think that's kind of traditionally what you would have as a fry, full of grease and deliciousness, and perfect when you're really, really cold after a walk on the beach. And it'll fill you up for the whole day because there's enough calories in it to feed you for a week. But it's glorious. And the old black and white pudding. Yeah.
And morning, Andrew January, and you're just in time for us to get to the main topic after half an hour. So feel free to comment along, ask questions, follow, all that stuff. To remind yourselves, we are talking about the reviewer's obligations, where I wrote a wee bit saying, yeah, the reviewer needs to share thoughts with the audience, but a publisher can place demands, and that kind of gets to the heart of what we're talking about. But maybe a reviewer isn't even doing it for an audience. Maybe they are just doing it to try and help maintain their mental health or sanity. And there's some questions that hopefully you can explore. How many times should a reviewer play? Is there a minimum? How timely does the reviewer need to be? How thorough do they need to be? Do they need to be regular? Could you just do it once? Is that fine? Which obligations are real and which ones are imagined? Do you kind of take a lot of them into yourself? And we've almost got this thing where as we start thinking about things, so let's we'll finish off the just because I love vodka.
I've never tried it.
Okay, so let's start off by, as we go into the main topic, let's define what we are talking about. So Nick Welford raised the points of there's a difference between a reviewer and potentially a critic, and I guess there's also the notion of okay, yesterday I was showing some of the cards from Crow's Overkill, and I was quite critical because of the writing on the cards, because we felt that some of the rules on the cards could have been improved in the word choice, if you know what I mean. Now, we were just talking about that aspect of the game. I've not personally played this game yet, even though I own 2 copies of it, and there are 2 different copies, just for the record. I think one of them I might have swapped for or something at somewhere, and one of them I got as part of a pack from Deepwater
Games. That's right.
But yeah, I mean, when I'm critiquing a part of it, is that review? Like when Jamie Stegmaier has okay, here's something that I love about this game. Is that a review, or do you need to be kind of coming to an overall conclusion and say, this is okay now, finally? I mean, it's a first impression review. Do you get what I mean?
I getcha. I think like the phrase review and critic are very, very close together. And I can only talk from my own experience here. Obviously, I can't talk about everybody else. But for me, a reviewer is someone who's presenting information to people. You're showing them what this game is about, what it looks like on the inside. The critique is where you're giving your own opinions on how the game made you feel, or certain things you may not have liked or did like. But the review portion should be, I think, here is everything that I have, and kind of here's all the information, and you can decide how you feel about this or not without kind of necessarily my input. Now, I don't think you can be an impartial reviewer. It's impossible. We're all humans with our own biases.
I mean, I was planning at some point to give a totally objective review of a game, but I've not done it yet because it is possible. So, for example, I could tell you, I'm not saying that this is true, but I could tell you that this game weighs 198 grams, and there are exactly 55 cards. Yes. And there's an average of 3.2 words per card, and things like that. This is totally useless information, but I was kind of planning to actually find a lot of stats and then carry on for 10 minutes.
But the point is that the stats you choose to give me are you reviewing the game in a particular light. So if you think it's important to you how many cards are in the deck, how much it weighs, that's your opinion, because you're not telling me everything about the game at once, because that's impossible. What you choose to reveal or not reveal is part of you reviewing something. So I don't think you can be objective, and I think that's just because we're embodied beings. That you know what I mean. We experience the world differently. Everybody does, and so someone will pick up a deck full of cards and go, "Oh, I've played 40 different cards games already this week," and will feel differently about that than someone who's never seen a card game before and goes, "Oh, this is really exciting." You can't not bring your experience to the table when you talk about games, and that's why they are from a person, and that's why we love them so much. Because if they were all objective and didn't really give us any insight of the person who talked about it, they wouldn't be interesting. We probably wouldn't listen. We listen to reviewers and stuff for their ideas and their opinions and to help us form our own, or at least I think it does. A fact sheet.
Yeah, I think this is fair. Jones Family Games Nights asks, does anyone do a Witch magazine style review of games? So having to playtest in every situation at every player account. And I mean, this is something to aspire to, but again, this brings us to an obligation. Whether this, I mean, is it an aspiration or is it an obligation? And I think maybe that's the heart of this discussion, because we can aspire to do things and say this is ideal, but it doesn't mean that we have to do those things. Do you know what I mean?
I completely agree to you. I agree with you. Like, there's a point where you want to be, of course, loyal to the game you're reviewing and have an obligation towards showing it in its best light or highlighting all the good and all the bad or whatever it is about it. But you are limited as well in what you're capable of doing. Like, I guess it depends on what you set out your goal as a reviewer is. Some people want to do first impressions things. So I've played it once. Here's what I thought. Some people want to do more in-depth things. And I'm sure there's somebody out there who wants to do the witch reviews of board games where they line them up side by side like that and have the time and the energy and the people to do it. And yeah, what limits you, you have to limit yourself on what you can and cannot do. Because there's, especially when you review a game, there's some that you feel will need more plays than others to fully wrap your head around them or to explain them. And now I've completely lost train of thought because I was mid-sentence. But I suppose, yeah, it depends what you're trying to do as a reviewer, how much attention to detail or how careful you are with a game or what kind of output you want. Like people who do playthroughs, for instance, you know, how many times have you played the game beforehand before you're willing to show it to everybody? That's all defined by you, and not by a publisher or necessarily your audience either. Because I think a lot of people also are curious to know how many times a reviewer has played a board game in the first place. And there's a curiosity there, I think, because people feel like it lends an authenticity. So, you know, if you've only played the game once or twice, have you really seen it fully unfold? And those are decisions that reviewers have to make and probably be upfront about, you know, about how much you've played of something to be able to come up with your review at the end of the day.
I mean, yeah, Jones, I mean, it's an interesting side question. And hello, Chris, by the way, it's lovely to see you. Of doing this kind of Witch magazine style thing. And I don't want to get too far down this rabbit hole. And yeah, for sure, there's Famitsu magazine in the video game area where, okay, they've got 4 reviewers for each of their things. And they each give a score out of 10. So the highest possible score in Famitsu is 40. And I think like it was a really big deal when something gets a perfect 40. It's like, wow, this was like the 3rd ever game to get this. I mean, but what I'm hearing more and more, it's about choosing what you're doing and then doing that thing, because whereas with Witch magazine, you can test the functionality. It does do this thing. And I could quite easily test, okay, how well does it hoover up long hair? How well does it hoover up this thing? And put several. The thing about Witch magazine isn't the individual review; it's the comparisons.
Yes.
And so I would kind of maybe have a bit of long hair. Maybe I've just kind of brushed my hair and then I put some hair on the carpet. See how some Hoover deals with it, and then try to do it in a scientific method with the same thing. But when and objects, let's call them objects, even though that's a really kind of clinical way to talk about games, when a thing is designed not to do a specific technical purpose, but to elicit an emotion, if you know what I mean, whether it's a movie or a book or a comic or a picture or whatever, then I think you can't have that scientific comparison anymore, can you?
Yeah, like you're trying to pack art into science essentially, and I do think board games are a type of art in loads of ways, and not just how they look, but how they evoke emotions, how you engage with them. They're different, I think, than other things, and sometimes obviously they're puzzles too. But it's kind of an art. It's an art form of its own, and asking it to adhere to kind of scientific standards when everyone. Like, we could all approach a Hoover, like you say, and use it the same way and get a specific result, but we could all play the same board game and have a very different answer or feeling or whatever about it. So I think trying to do that is tough. Like, I do think you can compare games maybe side by side, but I don't know how that would really help you make kind of decide if that was the game for you or not. Because they all kind of have their own merits and their own kind of idiosyncrasies. Trying to make them scientific, I think, is a tough one.
So I think we've, just to catch up a little bit with the comments, Oliver says a critic is an expert in the field doing it professionally. There's some elements of, are you being paid? Have you done it for a long time? But what is an expert? That's such a woolly term. I think I'm just, and to have a side note, Oliver mentioned that the Spiel des Jahres is probably the closest we've got to something where there's a really rigorous style. And yeah, sure, Germans might be a bit more scientific. That kind of... I'm so boring, apparently. But so ultimately, what we're talking about is, let's just expand it to anyone talking about a game. Let's sidestep the whole notion of what is a reviewer, board game media, board game, talking about board games. If you're someone who's chosen to talk about board games, whether it's giving an evaluation, whether it's giving a curated fact sheet, whether it's doing something, what are your obligations? So that is what we're going to talk about today. Now, let's talk about why are obligations a good thing? I mean, can obligations be a good thing to a person?
To a person, okay,
or to anyone.
Or to anyone. I think the obligations with board games is a really interesting one, because there's this level of trust between a publisher and a reviewer. If they, they send you a game to review or something like that, and there's a level of trust there that you are going to go and produce some sort of content related to this game. But there's also a trust on the end of the reviewer that the publisher is going to note what they've done and maybe, engage with it or promote it too, because it really is a two-way street, because obviously both ends of this equation need each other. The reviewer needs access, I suppose, to kind of newer games or to games in general to be able to promote, to sell more games. But also, the publisher requires people to have their games get in front of, new audiences with new people. So I think there's a really unusual relationship there, in the fact that this isn't, a paid job or anything like that, because I think money changes relationships a lot.
I mean, let's not, for the most part, I mean, let's ignore the fact that there are people like dice breakers. There are people who might get professionally paid to review games for newspapers or from, I know that Senate, they were very big on making sure that everyone who contributed to that magazine was getting paid a wee bit.
And I think that's really, really important too, even if it's just kind of a small point, because at the end of, as much and all as I hate to say it, because I enjoy reviewing games for fun and for the whole element of it, but it does come down to money. How many people get to see this game? How many people might eventually go and buy that game? And it's something I never thought about myself, but it's something publishers think about. So publishers are like, well, if I send this person this copy, how many faces is this going to get in front of? And it does come down to that in a lot of cases. Like, so hence why there's always the focus with reviewers on, you know, obviously how many subscribers you have, how many whatever, and all of the number machine starts going. And sometimes it isn't necessarily important how you say it, but who listens to you in the first place. And so when you get to obligations, then you've got this really delicate relationship, don't you, where you want to be honest about a game. I know I'm always honest about games I review, whether that's good or bad or indifferent. But you also have someone else who is kind of supporting what you do by sending you their game in the first place. And that's a very precarious position to be in, where the continued stream of games is dependent on, you know, how well this all comes together, you know, and I think a lot of people can feel that pressure, especially when you're starting out reviewing and you're small and someone sends you a game. You want to do a good job and you want to make a good impression, and you want people to think well of you. This may all be just coming from my own interpretations of the world. But it's so important, I think, to have your own voice and to be honest, and you have to have that obligation to the game as well and to yourself. I find it really funny how the whole industry kind of works, to be honest. It just seems so bizarre that, you know, here, I will send you this thing, you will make all of this content for me for free and things like that, for the cost of a game, whatever that might be to your publisher. And you're selling stuff for me, but we've no contract or anything like that. It is literally just, you know, hi, will you do this? And yes, sure. And very rarely do companies put obligations on reviewers. There's only been one company I've seen do that, and that's Stonemaier Games. And I know people were talking about it a lot not that long ago. And Jamie Stegmaier has always put stipulations on his reviewers up until recently, where he's kind of changed his track a little bit. But when I first reviewed something for him a year or so ago now, he had a stipulation that you had to have something created within 3 months of having received the board game, or 2 months, something like that. And that seemed incredibly fair to me. I don't think that's kind of too much to ask. Kickstarter campaigns often ask for you to have something ready by a particular time and date, because obviously there's a whole lot going on there and things have to be timely. So I don't think it's unfair for companies to put obligations on reviewers, as long as it's not like, you better say my game is nice or we'll never talk to you again kind of obligations. But timeframes and things make a lot of sense. So yeah, obligations. Would you like me to keep going?
I mean, I think this is interesting because the obligations of a reviewer come from, let's say, 3 directions. I'm going to posit. I think that I might be forgetting something. Let me know if this is just a hypothesis. Okay, I believe that obligations come from the publisher, from whoever's, or potentially the shop, whoever is supplying the game. Basically, if you're getting a free copy of something from somewhere, that person might be putting obligations on you. Secondly, your audience. If people are watching your things, they are going to make certain assumptions. Okay, you're going to have a new thing every day. Like, I've got at this point a certain, I mean, again, obligation, is that the right word for it? But I do feel like I have, it's not like, okay, if like there were a major life emergency and, you know, I didn't do my show tomorrow, I hope that some people would be disappointed. I'm aware of that. But, you know, I think that even if I manage to get back online, you know, 2 weeks later and say, hey, my entire life has been turned around, I'm very sorry for this. You know, there's a hierarchy, isn't there? Like, you know, let's say, you know, God forbid, I'm not going to even name what could happen, but, you know, something terrible could happen. And let's say I need to go to hospital for whatever reason. You know, people aren't going to expect me to continue doing this every day if I'm like, you know, in a really bad state. I mean, maybe I would. Maybe it would still help me to keep some sanity, and then people would understand that it's not going to be as good as it normally is. But there's a hierarchy. And then the third place that it comes from is the internal self. Like, okay, I've made this deadline for myself. I've decided that I want to play this game a certain number of times before I play it.
Yeah.
Okay, I've decided that I'm going to have this review last no more than 3 minutes 59 seconds. If you're Jay from 3 Minute Board Games,
Yeah.
or I've decided that I'm going to Is there anywhere else that obligations can come from?
I think you've actually covered the bases, because obviously, like, you've an obligation to the publisher who sent you a game to create something for them. And if they have a stipulation on that, you want to keep within that. If they want it by a particular date of the month, go for it. There is an obligation definitely to your audience. But what I found is that, I don't know, my audience anyway are just fantastic people. And if I didn't post something this week or something like that, they wouldn't be jumping down my throat about it either. I think they understand that I'm particularly human, which is nice. But there is definitely something there to wanting to keep your standard and your vision of how things are going to look available for your viewers, right? You know what I mean? You set your own bar when it comes to things like that. And then, of course, there are obligations to yourself where, how much time do I have to work on this? How do I want this to turn out? What am I trying to convey here? And a lot of that comes down to, like I was saying last week, I really want to make a manifesto that I think it's very easy to get lost in all the obligations apart from your own ones. When so much of what you do is online and in the media, and every extra like or every subscribe makes you feel a little bit better about what you do, and every time it doesn't work, you feel it too. There's something, I think, very about being very vulnerable when you put yourself out online with your thoughts and opinions, that anybody can just come along and say whatever about. So there's these, like, I think you're right. There's those kind of three obligations, and where you set your bar for those, or which one you think is more important than another, is really, really up to you. Like, for example, I had an obligation for a Kickstarter game that was supposed to be out on a particular Monday. It was getting released. The game I was supposed to receive was delayed by 2 weeks, and I received it the Friday beforehand. I would never, ever, ever do a game in that kind of stick, but I said I was going to do it, so I did it. I stayed up till midnight 2 nights in a row, getting all the games played, getting it recorded and filmed, and I had it out on the Tuesday like I said I would, because that matters to me, and it's important that when I say I'm going to do something, I'm really going to do it. And I don't know if that's the case with every reviewer. Like, you hear stories as well from publishers where I gave out this many games for reviewers and they didn't even review anything, or they didn't even do anything. And my response to that is to do your research, because there are lots of people who are starting out as reviewers, and a lot of people also who believe reviewers are just people who get free games for taking some photos and maybe making a video, not realizing how much more work goes into it than that, or creating a brand or something people recognize or are willing to listen to. There's lots of reviewers out on the internet. Being special is a difficult thing. And not everybody's going to be, the next Watch It Played or whatever it is you're aiming for. There are a lot of people in the middle, and you've got to decide, I think, what you're aiming for and where you're going for and what you're capable of even doing. So, I'm just rambling away here, am I?
No, it's really
like, did I have a
stuff.
point?
No, I think this is what it's all about, just kind of mulling over this stuff and seeing if we can come to a conclusion potentially. We've got Tabletop Games blog who says, I don't think a publisher should put any requirements on reviewers. Like, do you think there should even be a requirement to review the game? Like, do you think it's inappropriate for me to say, I am giving you this? So I have done this multiple times in the past. After I've been burnt, I said to people, okay, I have 3 obligations that I'm going to ask you to do. My obligations that I'm going to put on you, if you accept this, is firstly, to play it at least once. Secondly, to write a review of it within a year. And thirdly, to tag me on social media when you do so. So that seems like very simple things. But fair. I have had people who have reviewed a game without playing it at all. What? Which to me quite annoyed me.
That's ridiculous.
To be fair, it was as part of the original L deck, which was called Wibble Plus Plus with 5 games in the box. And I can understand, okay, 5 games, maybe you don't want to play all of them, in which case I would posit maybe just review Wibble if that's the only one you've played. If you've only played Grabble, review that one. If you've not played Grabble, it annoys me if someone is to call it a bad game and to say that's it without even having played it, especially given that Grabble takes about 2 to 3 minutes. And I would say that 2 to 3 minutes is an overestimate. I would say in early every game, once you know the rules, it's 2 minutes. I would say it's maximum 10 minutes to learn and play. And frankly, if you can't spend the time to do that, you shouldn't be writing a paragraph about what the game is like.
Yeah, I find that interesting. It's very rare that I felt there was a game I couldn't review, that somebody had given me to review and I thought looked interesting and I played it and I went, this really doesn't work for me or for my play group, or and I've always told the publisher and returned the game. It's pretty much always what I've done, because I don't believe in making a wholly negative review. My reviews are always very, well, I'd like to think I try my best to make them balanced. So even games that I don't think are my kind of thing, but I can see that there's plenty of merit to them. It's like, okay, I don't like worker placement a whole lot, but I think if you do, this is actually quite interesting. And I always try and have a positive and negative. I don't think I ever want to release a full negative video. I don't think it's fair, because I also think that there are so many different types of people out there in the world. I'm just one person, and if I don't like it, I'm sure there's 50 other people who probably will. And I think it does the game a disservice. And taking care of your obligations to the game, to do justice to it, to show it in its best light. And I don't think you can do that if you're biased or you don't enjoy it. Yeah, I think it's very unfair for reviewers to say, or to write a review, without having played the game. I think it's just straight up bizarre. I wouldn't call that person a reviewer. But if for whatever reason the game didn't gel well with them, they could have just said to you, "Hi, I'm sorry, this doesn't work for me. Have you any other reviewer I can send it on to?"
I mean,
and I don't think honestly, you'd be too upset about that either, would you?
That is a different situation. So I flashed up this, so I'm going to just share the link to this in all the comments. I am talking about Nick Case, who's DC. Okay, I realized that 3 months later, only 3 of the 30 review copies I had handed over had received the promised reviews. So Nick Case has got a slight bee in their bonnet. They have been burnt by lots of people, is what's going on here. If you follow the link and read it, you will find that ultimately what's happened is Nick gave away a lot of copies to people coming up at Essen, potentially coming up at other conventions, saying, "Hey, I will review this game for you," and then they just don't. I have had people, and now last Essen I gave it to 2 people. I gave my game, to be fair, my games are not the most expensive things. And if I were Nick Case and I were giving away things that cost me like a fair chunk more to print, I would be a bit more annoyed. But it's not just, when you're at a convention, it's not just the printing cost, is it? Because every game that I've taken over there, as a publisher, obviously, I've had to then transport it. That's potential, if your game is something that's likely to be sold out, and frankly, at Essen, coming from the UK, everyone tries to pretty much sell out. Last year, I basically sold everything, and then the remainder I sold to shops. And I actually have a system where I will not sell to shops unless either they've prearranged it, so I know to take extra, or they come to me on the final day, so I have a better expectation of, okay, this is how many I've got left. At which point I'll be like, okay, shops, I am happy to sell this stuff to you at half the price, which is normally what I do with shops. That's the way that shops work. And so when it comes to reviewer, I'm not just giving away the production cost, I'm also giving away the potential for quite a bit more money. And it's just smacks of, it's, as a publisher, I mean, it can become personal. And if someone says, "Oh yeah, we will just do this, we will do this thing, and we will tag everyone in it," yes, I'll be sure to tag you, and it will happen tonight. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't know these people, but frankly, what they're saying that are just basically doing an unboxing and are doing like a 1 minute kind of overview of each of these games based on a quick play of it, and are playing it right now. That doesn't seem that hard to do. Okay, I believe that they're going to do it. I believe that they're going to tag me. And so when someone doesn't tag me and doesn't message me, even like, how long has it been since Essen? Like about 11 months, 10 months?
Yeah.
I don't believe they're going to do it. I have no expectations of that at this point.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, they've basically taken me for a mug. That's what's happened. And so there is a personal, there's a personal kind of thing there. And
I think there's always a bit of a risk in sending something out to a reviewer you're not familiar with, or that you did, especially at conventions. It's not like you can very quickly look up and see their YouTube channel and see they've posted one video in the last 12 years, But I do think kind of you do need to be careful who you're handing your games to, because it is very easy for anybody to say, well, I'm on Instagram and I got 400 followers and you should give me your game for free because I'll take a picture of it. That kind of thing. I think there is a sect of people who think that reviewing is easy and they just have to say they're a reviewer and people will give them games, and they give the rest of us a bad name and whatnot. I think, as I said, you have an obligation to the person who gave you that game. Someone trusted you with their product, their baby, and it's up to you to go off and make what you can of it. I definitely wouldn't condone kind of anything like that where someone would take a game and not do anything with it, or not even contact you about it. It's one thing to say they didn't make a review, but at least to tell you, hi, I've still got your product or whatever, thank you, but this isn't for me, or this isn't working out, or I don't have time to do it.
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to do it. Things popped up.
Exactly, because
and
people.
That's the thing. I think that as a reviewer, I'm going to say, if you ask for something, there's Maya right at the start puts it really well when they said it's all about honesty. And I think basically do what you say you will and be honest to the people. I would like to quickly catch up with the comments because I've been remissing it. So Chris says, I see all sides of this coin. I understand being a reviewer is unpaid. It's a time spent. Also, for the supplier, they are giving stock away and they probably expect something in a certain time. Yeah. Reviews are somewhat time sensitive, surely. And Jones Family Games Night, if that's what I'm going to keep calling you. True, but the loss is in a few tens of pounds. And what's the minimum wage again? Making the point that if I wanted to charge, what is it, like $7.20? I think it's about that.
That's a pounds.
We're
like €10.
It doesn't matter. Let's assume that it's £7.
Okay.
Let's make the maths easier. So, like, if I am getting let's say this game. Let's say if I got this game for free, which I actually paid. I paid, it was like £25. I bought this on Big Cock, which Board Game Trading in the Chat UK, but that seems like a decent price. It's like a nice markdown. I'm going to play it, and then if I don't like it, I'll probably be able to sell it on for a similar price. Anyway, the point is that now if I were given a game to be like, okay, here, play it. This takes about 2 hours per game. If I want to play it, let's say 3 times, which seems like a reasonable minimum, okay, that's 6 hours. That's not including anyone else who I might have to rope in. And then maybe I spend, okay, even if I do my minimum effort, okay, let's just write something 1 hour. Okay, that in itself is 7 hours. But this kind of ties into what you need to do. Can you get away with a minimum effort thing? Or do your obligations rise to your other people? Because frankly, if a reviewer, I have a thing where I will say, yes, honestly, if you send me a game, I will, no, fine. I will talk about it for, like, I will review the cover of it. That doesn't cost me much time. I could review the cover of it in a minute. I could just put it up and say, okay, this cover is really bad because it kind of suggests that it's bloody. I didn't realize this at the time, but it suggests that it's dark, it suggests it's morose, and it's actually a light-hearted game about cats. What's going on? This should be changed for a second edition. And by the way, it is going to be changed for a second edition. That's my own game. But I could review it. And then that hasn't taken me much effort. But publishers are, of course, expecting something more. We've got and remember that as a publisher, okay, I frankly reached a point where I've realized that, yes, I make money from Yogi. I have been very successful with that. I've been incredibly fortunate. And yes, I have managed to make money from some publishers who pay me for my time at this point. Like, I've got a publisher who I'm not going to name, but they contacted me not so long ago to say, hey, how much would we have to pay you for an hour of your time as a consultation person for a quiz style game? It's not the biggest company and the biggest toy games company in the world, but it's up there. But anyway, the point is that, like, I have made money with games, but I've reached a point where, frankly, all the Eldex stuff, Kitty Cataclysm, and that I would almost be better off financially if I hadn't done any of that. And it's a sad situation to be in. And so you can't then turn around and say, hey, Bez, you're making money. You should, And I do think about review copies as a legitimate expense. I do kind of think of, okay, I'm going to earmark 10% of stuff for accidental stuff, for giveaways, for review copies. And frankly, I am understanding that stuff goes wrong. People don't always manage to do stuff. But yeah, especially before your Kickstarter. Think before a Kickstarter, especially if it's a cheap game and I'm not expecting anything, it might cost me, 20 quid to send it to you. But even if it's just a cheap card game, if it's like a big £50 game, to get a nice production copy before the fact might be 200 quid, because it does cost actually more than RRP before the fact. The best solution... Oh, sorry. Do you want to reply to this point?
I did, yeah. This is something that bothered me for quite a while, because especially when you started out reviewing, I was very convinced that the publishers were doing me a really big favor by sending me a game to talk about. You know, that kind of way where it was them going out of their way to do something nice for me. It's my husband that's always reminded me of, he goes, you've no idea the value of what you post online in getting somebody's game name in front of others. He's like, I'm only a fairly small reviewer, but a couple of thousand people will see whatever I post, right? Between Instagram and Twitter and stuff like that, people see names, and every so often people come back to me and went, oh, I just bought this game because I saw you posted about it, Board Game Inquisition, and I'm always amazed by this. But it's the value of your own work, I don't think, should be devalued just because it costs money for a publisher to send it to you. Whatever they're sending to you, you're of more value as in a sense, and word of mouth and things like that, than a single game, I think, ever would be.
100%.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's so easy to forget your own value and, you know, the value of your own work when you're dealing with a big company that, you know, makes these games that you love and that you're really, really excited about, and you might have bought anyway, and you feel like you're part of something really important, or that, you know what I mean, this is a really big deal to you personally. So you forget that there's a value to what you do. So yeah, I do think publishers, it's harder for smaller publishers, quite obviously, to afford to be able to send out games and prototypes to everybody. And I know with smaller publishers, I've always been willing to send on their game and things like that afterwards, and to try and make it a little easier. And now that we've got like Tabletopia and stuff, there are loads of different ways of playing games online, this gets easier and easier.
But we had the whole conversation about, you know, whether... Well, I say we had a conversation. You basically posted a video where you mentioned it, and then I agreed with you. And that was
I don't like it either. But some people find it helpful. I can see why smaller publishers would appreciate it. You don't have to have money up front for prototypes and things like that, and get people to try your game and have an opinion on it, and things like that. It cuts down on a lot of costs, I think. But for a real experience of your game, I don't know if that's how I'd go about it.
Yeah, I mean, I would... yeah, this kind of goes into the obligations of the reviewer to the audience, because I think we are focusing. And by the way, I should have checked in with you what time you need to skedaddle off.
I don't have a life. Just keep going. Tell me when to stop. We're good.
Okay, so Ask Vig.
Which is you.
I'm going to call you Ask Vig, unless you. So this is a really nice idea where they've suggested a non-profit organization that gets or buys review copies and distributes them to reviewers. So there's like a step of removal from reviewers to the people. And they did that with video games before YouTube reviewers became a thing. And I know that Board Game Exposure, that's originally what Board Game Exposure was meant to be about, before it kind of tailed down. And now that Facebook group's just another, let's chat about board games group. Yeah, have you heard of anything like this, Antoinette?
No. No, it's not. Like, the only cases I've had where I've been forwarding games on to other people were for Kickstarter previews and things like that, where there's limited number. But I'm more than happy to do that when it comes to those kind of endeavors to smaller publishers. It makes lots of sense.
Oliver says they want to publish their games as soon as possible, but that's from themselves. The publisher shouldn't impose those deadlines unless they want it to be an advert and pay for it. But again, if I give you a game and then you publish it 20 years later, is that fine?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, it feels like maybe at least it feels like I would like get to. Again, this is like what I wanted to say. Like, with those obligations that I'd previously said, how would you respond to those, Oliver? Where I said, okay, do it within a year. And like, again, things go wrong, but let me know if it...
there's a really interesting idea that I stole from Eric Yucco. You know, he does some fantastic board game reviews, but he has he has a page on his website where he explains his obligations to the publisher. And I really like the idea. So he was able to lay out, well, these are the type of games I'm interested in reviewing. I will have it done within this particular time frame. Here's the type of things I will do with your game and whatnot. And I loved it. So I put it on my own website as well, so that if anybody looked me up, it's like, well, here, I'm laying out the framework for how I work, and check that suits you. And I think more people should do something like that. I think, like, it's kind of like, as I said, the manifesto idea, but here's exactly what you can expect from me, and here's what I expect from you. So it's not really a contract, but it's something you could point people to say, this is how I do things, and things like that. So yeah, you see what I mean? He's laying out everything that works for him and what doesn't. I think more people need to have something like that. Your own little... Here's like your protection shield. I told you I would have it done within this time. So if you're asking me within 2 weeks why I haven't made a review, well, it's written right here. You know, that kind of thing.
And I really like how Eric Yurko says, okay, this is what I want to see in your games. And if that's what's Eric playing, contact. And they have done amazing reviews. Like Dave, this is one of Wibble, and they've got like a lovely style of photography where you can just, it's so distinctive. Anyway,
their work's beautiful. So maybe more people need to do things like that, and publishers also need to make similar things, I think, so that everybody knows what page they're on. Pardon?
Having healthy boundaries.
Yeah, but also you know exactly what expectations are upon you before you agree to anything. So before you take a game and then they go, well, actually, we need that next week. And you were like, hang on a minute, that's not what you said before. At least this way, everybody's on the same page. I think it's a nice idea. And it gives you a feel for your reviewer as well, what kind of things they're interested in. So people just don't tell you about the next greatest party game in your emails. So publishers choosing,
Yep. And like talking about types of games, like I had actually a couple of publishers asking me, hey, is this something you'd be interested in playing on your Tuesday night stream? Because I said, you know what, if you want to send me something, that's fine, but it has to be one of these things. And I got quite annoyed by so many people ignoring that and sending me stuff where I said, look, on my streams, we play things where you need no technology. No one should have to bring anything other than pencil and paper. And anyone coming in from the chat should be allowed to drop in and play, even if it's halfway through the game. And if they can't, the game should be at most 20 minutes long.
Yeah.
And so many publishers sent me stuff where it's like, okay, now you need this digital app to play, or you need, you know, all these cubes. Oh, people can bring that. No, and
at least now you know they're not listening to you.
Oliver is lovely. Why is it a big problem they are allowed to choose who they send free games to? Any reviewer may buy the game themselves. So,
why is it a big problem?
Yeah, I mean, that feels like something that we could explore. Like, why is this selection an issue?
Because very simply put, because if one company gets to choose the same people to review their games all the time, it means that there's less diversity in the audience in the first place. So if you only have your games reviewed by Man versus Meeple, well, then you only ever have their opinions or their insights about the game, and that audience that follows them. This is why you want different people with your game, because they'll have different thoughts about it. They'll appeal to different people as well. And surely you want your game in front of as many people as possible, and not just everyone who has the same kind of ideas or thoughts about it.
But that can be incorporated into the publisher's selection process, surely.
Yeah, exactly. You would think so, and you would think so anyway. I'm not sure how big publishers decide who gets what, to be very honest with you. I don't think they have a sign-up sheet like some other publishers do. Like, you'll go on a review list and then maybe they'll contact you about something in the future, which I always think is a really nice touch, because I think it's a much nicer way than saying, no, we're not interested in you at the time. But it makes you feel like maybe someday they might. It's kind of a better thing. But yeah, I don't know how they pick. But I think obviously the more people,
like
better.
Here, we've got notions about a publisher's obligations to a reviewer. That if a reviewer has reviewed your games, yes, you should be sharing it. Absolutely. And Chris says, whatever is expected, it should be clearly outlined so everyone knows what's going on. Publishers will have expectations, like ensuring it's fair, honest, and based on actually knowing the game. And it's lovely, always lovely to see you, Richard. Lots of love. Miss you, miss everyone. Oliver also wins the Modest Awards. What if the game is just absolutely terrible? Like Chris and I are going to potentially talk about Hecho and how it is literally literally broken. Like the game cannot continue at certain points if you play two players. And it feels kind of mean at a certain point, because this isn't even a game that you can get anywhere at this point, I don't think. And so it's like, okay, here's apparently a family who produced a board game, but we can use it maybe as a case study for, like, why are we reviewing these games? Because this is something, again, you brought up, whether people are reading reviews as a purchasing guide, or is it interesting to talk about, hey, if you've got 2 to 6, make sure that it doesn't ever crash and burn at 2 or 6. Like, it doesn't need to be the best experience, but at least it should be playable.
I think there's nothing worse than getting something unplayable, or I think it's almost as bad as getting a game that is good but not great, and it's very, very close to being great, and you're like, so close. Reviewers work for the consumer, kind of true.
This is an interesting point. Like, so that's the thing. Like, the fact that I just said, like, I've got bits of love for Richard, that's an issue. Like, this is an interesting thing where Jamie Stegmaier says, okay, I don't watch the review of your game. And to me, that's kind of a weird thing, because I kind of, so let's talk about the friendships first. So is that a problem if disclosed? I think there's issues with any relationship where one party is meant to be critiquing their other.
The thing is, though, like, publicity, whether it's good or bad, is still getting people to hear about your game. So you can mention Pendulum from Stoneware Games. It's just come out. There was a big hype about Pendulum, and then there was the issue with the reviewers, but people started reviewing it. No one necessarily liked it a whole ton, but there's still a lot of buzz around it, a lot of people discussing it, and I bet you all know the name of that game, regardless of how terrible it might be, in inverted commas, or whatnot. So I think having people talking, whether it's negative or positive, is interesting. Like, there's a review I did.
Just to clarify, are you saying that you think this game is terrible, or?
I've not played it, so I'm not going to judge it. I would never judge something based on what everybody else said. It might give me some kind of leanings, perhaps, but no, I'd want to play it first and try it out. But I have no interest in a real-time game, so so I didn't go down that route. But you'd be surprised sometimes as well how much a negative review can help people. Not necessarily full-on negative, but giving feedback or criticism like that is helpful for publishers. Like, I reviewed a game for Dragon's Dawn Production last year, a big dungeon game, and it was really, really interesting. And I played it probably more than I've played any of my other review copies. I played it a lot to give it a really good feel for it because it was a big game, but it didn't. There was a bunch of things that just didn't line up for me, and I didn't like it. And I said so in the review. I was worried about saying it. And then the designer met me at Essen and said, "Thank you for your honesty. We were able to look into some of those things afterwards." And it's stuff like that, that, yeah, on the one hand, the board game community is really big and with the big reviewers and the big publishers, but there are so many small, amazing people that we forget about far too fast. None of the big companies maybe sending me games or anything like that, but there's all these amazing people in between that are super, super important.
Sorry for the big thing. Basically, Oliver saying that they will give their opinions. Yeah, Chris says it's hard to be neutral when you have a relationship. I will point out that in the music industry, I think it's going to be natural that you do have these relationships, and that, but frankly, then potentially starts giving all these caveats. Ask Fig worked with video game reviews. This sounds amazing. We bought all our games, we sent them out to test groups. In board gaming, it's all about the preview review copy. It's different, but reviewers could still be shielded from publishers, and publishers could still get plays for more plays if there was a middleman. And yeah, and yeah, if Oliver says if a publisher would never send any more games, then so be it.
Agree.
It is hard to be neutral. Yeah, and so that's the whole middleman. That's a really interesting model that there could be. But again, I know there's Punchboard Media, and maybe they could even move to a point where, okay, we will take these games, but we won't tell you who has them. Yep, that's a thing. And I would rather someone tell me they hate the game and why, and potentially I might love the game for the same reasons.
Yeah.
And
very true. Absolutely true.
Yeah. Richard would prefer to work with Cold Spring or Asmodee, Asmodee is not only a distributor. That is incorrect. And Asmodee is a publisher and a distributor, which is also a conflict of interest. I'm just going to say it. I'm not saying it's it's a potential conflict of interest. Let me rephrase for so Asmodee owns Fantasy Flight Games, a whole lot of
everything.
Do we even need to go through it? Like, basically they own Days of Wonder, they own Catan Studios, they own help me out.
I'm trying to remember what else they bought last year. It was just like everything was falling.
I'm looking at basically the point is that Asmodee do own a lot of stuff. They publish a lot of stuff. So saying that they are only a distributor is not quite true. And Cold Spring are owned by Asmodee. I'm just putting that out there. They're the only independent publisher. So there's two independent distributors currently in the UK. One is VR Distribution, who has only just opened up, and one is Spiral Galaxies. Every other, so Green Board Games Company, Asmodee UK, and Cold Spring are all owned by Asmodee, which is a big conglomerate. And Big Potato Games, they do, and other companies, Gibson's, do some of their own distribution. there's other people like that, and I do some distribution. But again, there is still the interest there.
Just on that whole point of relationships with publishers or with designers or things like that, I know it's something that I really struggle with, because it feels a lot like you need to be friends with everybody and get to know everybody to be able to have access to kind of different distributors, designers, things like that. And I don't know where that leaves the socially awkward people like myself, who find things like conventions hard and who just can't just go up and say, hello, I'm so and so, let's all be best friends. And I think that's another kind of issue where your review on its own doesn't necessarily have merit unless you are kind of, I suppose, unless you're also kind of a, what's the word? Not celebrity, but you're a personality too. Does that make sense? So people, I think, don't just want information. They want a person that goes with it. And then I think the bigger distributors and publishers and things like that want those personalities as much or if not more than they want a review of their game. They want people who are going to go out and engage other people and show their game in kind of a fun light. And that's a different style of reviewing too. And I wonder where that leaves the rest of us that aren't so socially adept.
I mean, this is a thing that there is a lot of wrangling. And Oliver says they always expect to send the game to someone else or back. And so you get so many free games is really only true when you talk about big publishers. I am going to challenge that, because I've never asked for a copy of my game back. I have had I have asked for one review copy, which was of the first ever live stream that I did, and I did eventually review it several months on, which was Elementos. That was the one, and here I am talking about it again, which I decided was a good game, but it had some issues in that it can become a stalemate issue, and I prefer games that are more about placement and movements. But anyway, the point is I got this game, and also, like, after I just did a BGG thing of King Brick, now known as Cube Quest, the brothers, like, the next year said, hey, thank you very much, here's our game, like, just if you can review it, it would be really nice. That was before I was a publisher or anything. They didn't know who I was, other than I had given a review of their game on the thing. So
I've never been asked to return like a game, in the sense that game is your payment. And when it comes to Kickstarter games, for sure, you often send those on. But usually when the campaign is fulfilled, they'll send you a copy at the end. I know that's in Eric's stipulations in particular, that if he reviews a Kickstarter game, he wants a final copy at the end. So yeah, I find that unusual, the idea of having to return them. I've never been asked to return games or reviews. Yeah,
I mean, Bauer's Game Corner, I think Bauer has a similar thing where if it's not the final version that you send, they would expect a final version later on as a thank you. We've got some comments about the cults of the newness, and if you have to get early copies, then you're reliant on the relationship with the publisher and being in their good graces. And yeah, should we be trying to move away from them? Sure. So, Oliver, if someone doesn't publish the reviews in a reasonable amount of time, then the publisher can decide not to send to them again. But the question is, is that just the publisher has a right to not review it, or is there an obligation? I mean, can we all agree? Can we just make a point-blank statement that if you say, I will do something, then you have an obligation to actually make efforts to do that? I'm not going to say that, like the fact that, 30 copies of Nick Case's game were given away and 3 of those came up with reviews, that feels a bit
shoddy.
Yeah, exactly.
Shoddy. Yeah, that's lousy. That's just straight up lousy.
And like when someone says, okay, I'm going to do a thing tonight, and it's like not that it sounds like something that they're planning to do, and it's putting it into the mix, and I don't see it anywhere, and like they've got other games up there that same night, but then they like, I don't know, like that's again feel, and it might be that there's a certain percentage of okay, things go wrong with life, but can we accept that do what you say you will is an obligation? And ultimately, it's the nuance of what is it okay. I mean, the real difficult thing, it seems to be, is the reviewer-publisher relationship.
Isn't that just being a decent human being, though? Like, outside of board games for a minute, if I say to you, I'll meet you out down the road at 10 o'clock, I'll meet you down the road at 10 o'clock, and you should also meet me, because that's the kind of, that's a human thing. I find it really funny that we have to say this out loud to the people who take board games, that you should review it like you said you would. Those people are just not nice people. You know what I mean? If you couldn't be bothered to contact somebody and say, I had an issue doing this, or whatever it is, that I judge your character, not your reviewing skills. Yeah. Oh.
And man, I'm really behind on the comments. I'm about 15 minutes behind. Just trying to skim through these. Yeah, you don't want to just have really long things that people just click yes to, or someone not agreeing stuff. Yeah, and we've got Sates, who's now working for Quality Beast, who say that they want actual numbers. Different stuff, but some people just don't care. Yeah, I mean,
I love how we're like behind in time.
It is lovely to see you. The most frustrating things are when you do something other than, here's how to play the game, here's my opinion, and it's pretty much ignored.
Yes.
Just review games you like, surely? No, because that opens up its own can of worms. Because do you want to go into this?
Yeah, no problem. Just because I like or dislike a particular game doesn't mean someone else wouldn't like it. Like, I'm not making a review channel of games that I really enjoyed. I'm making a channel of, here's some games I thought were really interesting, here's how they turned out. Here's the bits I liked, here's the bits I didn't like, and maybe you love the bits that I hated. I've reviewed lots of games that I wouldn't necessarily keep and play myself, but I think are good games, just not for me. And I think it's up to you as a reviewer to show people that, there's more than one angle to this, or you're trying to give them information about the game, or you're trying to, I don't know, I always think of it, help them decide if they would like the game or not. That's how my channel has always been set up. So, I think it's important that you kind of lay it all out for them like that.
Jeroen says they tend to be a bit friendlier towards people who they know, but Jeroen would still give an honest opinion to everyone. And I think this is a thing, like, I am going to say that Andy Hopwood's game Mindleaf is a great game, and I tweeted about it, and then I said, by the way, just disclaimer, I know Andy Hopwood, and I would consider them a friend, but I would not be talking about this if I didn't think it was a good game. Friends don't tell friends that their game is good when it isn't, and I genuinely believe that. Yes. If Chris or McCall were to tell me, hey, this is a great game, Bez, and then I learned later that they didn't actually like it, I'd be like, why did you just tell me all this stuff to placate me? That's not a nice friendship.
Yeah, no, it's not. Some people need to think.
I don't categorize people who create content for Kickstarter campaigns as reviewers, but this is the thing, like, what is content for Kickstarter campaigns? Because, sorry, Richard, but if I'm coming on your show before or during a Kickstarter, is that not content for the Kickstarter campaign?
Promotion.
And this is like a thing I was chatting about with Chris the other day, when, like, if I were to go on Board Game Design Lab again, I would be like, okay, let's time this so that it's around my Kickstarter thing, and I've got a link, and it's an easy link, and then, I'm going to chat about some design aspects of the game that I made, because I learn something with every game that I make. or even in multiple things sometimes. But yeah, there's an understanding that I'm there, and there's like an element of promotion. There's an element here of me just, frankly, there's an element here of me wanting to maintain my sanity and have an element of, this is not like we are in the same room. You know, we can't, you know, hug or clap our elbows or anything, but it's the closest we've got right now.
Previewers.
As in the difference between previewers who get the game early and just give their opinions for the Kickstarter campaign. I think.
Or marketeers.
And yep, Oliver agrees that if you get it, then you're doing that. I agree with Bez, but then you have to have the gumption to say no and not be pressured or tempted to take a super hot game if you're not going to make it on time. So basically, I think there's an obligation, again, to yourself to have this negative obligation to say, I'm not going to spend more than a certain amount of time on it. If you don't want to spend more than whatever amount of time is right in your own head, whatever amount of effort is time in your own head.
True.
This isn't going to happen. And Clever Unicorns has a big comment that I'm just going to put up and read out. We have an issue at the moment where the bigger channels are charging silly amounts of money, or would you like to read this out for a change, Antoinette?
All right. We have an issue at the moment where the bigger channels are charging silly amounts of money for Kickstarter previews, and underplaying that those previews will get a lot less views than the reviews of published games on the same channels. I always advise new designers use some of the review channels that are doing it purely for the love of the games. Unless you already have a huge following, then paid videos do not convert backers, and smaller channel videos will do the same job on their campaign page. Right. I was wondering how long before this would come up when you talk about Kickstarters and reviewers and previewers, how long before we'd be talking about money.
So apparently an hour and 36 minutes, or yes, when this was made 5 minutes ago, so about an hour and a half.
Right.
Well, although we started being on topic about half an hour in, so about an hour until we started talking about money.
Yes, so we started talking about money because I think there is an issue there with the smaller channels, especially when it comes to Kickstarter preview, and the larger channels who are getting paid to do previews and questioning, you know, how honest they're being perhaps about a game because they're so tied to the company that made it and they're receiving financial support from that, and then the rest of us aren't. So I often think that there's kind of a bit of a begrudgery there, but also a questioning of authenticity. I don't know enough about this to judge whether that is the case, but it's just that kind of feeling, isn't it? But I guess, you know what, if somebody brings a lot of views to your campaign and makes your game look good for Kickstarter, I guess that's why you would pay somebody to do that kind of job, right? Isn't it? Like, I think it's like Man vs. Meatball is the one that they will always get your project to kind of fund if you can get them to review your game, as people say. And if that, I guess, you know what, if you're putting your game out there, you want it to succeed. You know, why would you pick the smaller reviewer over the bigger ones? But it's a weird linking there when you go obligation to the publisher, but also money. Instantly, you know, can change so many relationships when you're suddenly being paid to do it. And then we could go on to reviewers being paid, but let's not go there.
Are you familiar with this thing on Meatballs Like Us?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I am.
So, yeah, for those who don't know, Michael Heron does this, and those are the Kelpies. But there's a few statues of them in Scotland. Anyway, so the point is they do a blog all about accessibility, and they review games, and then they give them a critique on how accessible they are via certain metrics. And then they decided, because earlier they had talked about the ethics of affiliation. And so I think this is, for people who are in the comments, this is also potentially further reading, and I'm just sharing these two things, because this goes into, can we have something that works for us? We have some comments about, Oliver says, a half-finished game is still a review. Of course, my review can be used to promote their game, but that's true of any review. They can always be used to promote a product. And yeah, even after the fact, 2 years later, I'm still using a review for In a Bind, even though that game is literally unavailable for purchase. I'm still using it to promote my ability to make games in some ways.
Yeah.
I have not been convinced that watching reviews is going to help me as a potential game purchaser.
Interesting. I think that's one side of this that I never really thought about when I decided to review board games. I kind of thought I would just give out my opinions and see what people thought. But then it surprised me that people would go and, based on my opinions, purchase things. And I never connected the dots all the way along till you see it. So I don't know if I understand it fully myself either. But I guess some people just want some insight into games in the first place and then decide to go try them out. Do you identify with any reviewer?
And I think that's the thing. Like, if you do have someone who you kind of work with, who you kind of gel with, I should say, that you think, okay, I've got an idea of what they're all about. And hello, Jess. It's lovely to see you. And Kickstarter pages are a pure marketing exercise. I really like them for that, much better than publishers' web pages for giving a biased source of info about the game. I mean, isn't a publisher's web page also just a pure marketing exercise, though?
Yeah. I think they're saying that perhaps it's doubly biased on the Kickstarter page. They're biased on their own page and they're extra biased on a Kickstarter page. It is kind of cool to see a company really sell their product, though. Like, really go all out about how amazing it is and show it off and make it look good. There is some excitement, I think, to do with that. You know, get you excited about it too.
And sure, I mean, Alan Outson, if you enjoy solo games, there are people like who review solo games only, and that's something that you can do. Yes, but they are really well done these days. Animations, videos. But again, isn't that true of the publisher's web page? I mean, like, if I have the budget, which I don't personally, for an animation on the Kickstarter page, am I not then likely to use that same animation on my web page after the fact? So, yeah, we've now finally caught up with the comments. So we were talking about how it can be good, because it's good to have deadlines and stuff. And I think what we've really established is that it's good to have a sense of what is happening and set clear communication.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. When is it bad?
We've talked a bit about this as well, to be fair.
Oh yeah, we have a little bit. Yeah, when is it bad? When your obligations are bad. I suppose when they're just unrealistic expectations that you're either putting on yourself or you feel like, because it's funny, right? I don't think your audience actually put any pressure on you. At least, like I said, mine don't. But you imagine they might be putting pressure on you, whether that is the case or not. And there's something quite serious about all those obligations weighing down upon you when you're trying to create something and it isn't working out exactly the way you would have liked, or you're like, I need to have this out by a particular date, but something happened in your life and you're trying to get it all sorted out. And the pressure, I suppose, can really weigh in upon you. I think some people are much better at dealing with stress maybe than I am, but I know I will always get that done by the day I said I'd get it done. And I put videos out on a Wednesday, and gosh darn it, there'll be a video out on Wednesday if I have to crawl my way there. And it's just, it's just how my brain works when it comes to this kind of stuff. And I think other reviewers are like that too. Like, well, I put something out on a Tuesday, someone will be waiting to see it on Tuesday and wonder where it went. And so I think you end up combining those kind of viewer things in your own mind with your own expectations of what you're capable of doing. And of course, everybody wants to make everything they make to be the best. or to get better every time you do it. So it's never enough to go, oh, I did a good job this time. Well, next time I'm going to try this and do this. And I think that's part of reviewing being an art form too, because you develop a style as the more you do it, you add things in, you take things out. It's forever changing and mutating. And I think that's also really, really exciting. But it's a lot of pressure too, to continually be your best at all times. And to expect that from you. And also because what you create, you're putting out on the internet for everybody to judge. You always want to put your best foot forward, don't you? Or your best face forward, or whatever we're saying. So yeah, I think that's where the pitfalls, I suppose, of your obligations can be problematic. When they take over and it's not fun to do what you're doing anymore, you're just fulfilling obligations.
Yeah. I think that I would love to explore this a bit more thoroughly on a future thing. It strikes me that the kinds of three things I mentioned, like obligation to the self, obligations to others, and obligation to publisher, we could even talk about each of these in their own show, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, probably.
So if that is something that you would be willing to maybe come on in like a few weeks or a month, like whenever we can find a time.
Sure.
Amazing. Let's kind of chat about that after this thing, and make sure that I put it in the diary this time. I'm very, very sorry about the first time. I totally messed up because of my organizational thing, and that's the thing, like, people do mess up.
Yeah,
I would like to ask you, as a final question, of course, if people have any wrap-up questions, let's try to wrap up within the next 5 minutes or so. But Antoinette, in a few words, what obligations do you feel from publishers? What obligations do you feel to your viewers and or listeners? What obligations do you feel to yourself?
Ooh, okay. We'll start with publishers because that's the easiest one. To be fair, most of them don't put a lot of obligations on you in the first place, but I always take it that I want to get something made and put it out in a timely manner. And I always want to show a game in its best light. I want to make it look good. I want to be very insightful about how it's all put together, and I want to be able to kind of tear it apart and repiece it together again for people. I think that's always my obligation to the game publisher. The obligation to my viewers, I guess, is just to be myself. I think that's one of the reasons I started reviewing in the first place, was that I didn't find any board game content that related to me or explain games in a way I would like to have heard them. So this is why I started what I do, because I felt like this is the stuff I wanted to listen to. Maybe other people did too. I don't really know. But I promise to keep being honest with them and bringing insightful thoughts, hopefully, and some really kick-ass games. I want to show people the exciting stuff. And then finally, my obligations to myself. This is a little bit more difficult. Because I create board game reviews as a way of managing my own life and my own mental health. This is the thing that I get up for in the morning. And without it, my life would be incredibly empty. So I promise I won't cry. But so I have those obligations to myself to keep going and to keep making something I'm proud of, or that I'm at least happy with, because you can't always be proud all the time. And to keep getting better and better. So yeah, those are my obligations. What are yours?
What are my obligations? Wow.
Yeah.
Can I have a drink first?
Of course.
So I mean, I don't do many reviews, but let's say, okay, Alan, Paul, and I did do a review of Energy Empire, and I guess for the publisher, I guess it's to be to present it accurately. I don't know if I would say to present it in its best light, but to at least present it accurately, in that I was coming to it with my designer hat on, thinking, okay, why was this the way it was? these two things seem a bit unbalanced, and and I said the things that I felt explicitly, but then to also counter that with the things that I appreciated, but also to frame it in my real world experience, and to continue to come to those caveats, and finally to make it about the game, rather than say, okay, I'm going to be talking about the game and then go off on a tangent about, hey, lots of games do this issue, and then pretend that that definitely applies to this game. I would say the obligation to viewers, like certainly for this stream right now, I feel like I have an obligation to people to have something which is entertaining, which is informative, which is interesting. I have an obligation to basically start up between 9:59 and 10:02. Yeah, that to me is an obligation which I have generated, and it's an easy obligation to. And I also have an obligation to the interviewee guests, where it's like, okay, an obligation to be organized enough, again, apologies, to kind of make sure I don't have clashes, to kind of say, okay, this is, now that it's on the calendar, at least I can say, okay, please double check that it is on this calendar, and I can tell people, okay, it's on the calendar now. And to make sure that I am present, that I'm listening to the person, that they get a chance to speak, and that I'm not casting the guests in a bad light. I might ask them challenging questions. I mean, if sorry, I'm trying to remember the designer. Like, if the designer of a game said, hey, I'm coming on and we're going to talk about this thing, I might say, hey, why did you do this specifically? Like, I might challenge them on this particular thing. And my obligations to myself, I think, override that to an extent, which is, again, the obligation to stay mentally healthy, and if as much as I can, and the obligation to say, yeah, I am going to present myself in a way that I am comfortable with being on the internet for infinite time. The obligation to say, I'm not going to agree to do something that I will resent, if you know what I mean. And so saying, okay, maybe giving myself out and giving myself the allowance to say, okay, I'm going to re-examine this every so often, rather than saying, yes, I am going to agree to do this with you in January, because I can't plan that far ahead. I'm not, someone asked me to get in touch with them in January. I'm like, no, I'm not going to agree to that. And so I said, hey, once you're feeling ready, you get in touch with me if you are still wanting to do it. And so, Oliver, it's lovely to have you. Thank you so much for all the chat. Yeah, we have the whole notion of playtesting. Like, we could have a topic where, in Kitty Cataclysm, I changed 4 cards. Sorry, the 2nd edition hasn't come out, but this is version 2. This is the only copy in existence. It says version 2 on the box. You can see it's in marker on it, literally every side. And then, so, yeah, 4 of the cards have changed, and parts of that was due to you, where, okay, the card where other people have to draw 3 cards, that's not actually that difficult to play. So there we go. Should it be worth 3? No, it should probably only be worth 2.
Oh, my husband would be delighted. That was his suggestion. He's big into card games, and he was like, "This doesn't seem balanced with this." I'm like, "Let's us see."
But,
so it was nice that you asked.
And the scatter, which I'm trying to find the actual, scatter was worth 3 points. But it's important that there is something, and so these are the other ones. There's an additional scatter, which I just got rid of the cat chair, and there's one more of those. Anyway, but the point is that how can, if a publisher is willing to change a game for a subsequent edition, then sure, I will absolutely agree it's not your job to playtest. but it will always be playtesting. When someone plays my game in a convention, arguably, yeah, the focus, there's a difference between what is the focus, but what are the peripheral benefits. Like, the focus is on showing them this is what the game is like. I hope you will like it. If you like it, buy the game. That's what I'm doing at the convention. But if after playing it several hundred times, then it's possible that somebody like, hey, wait a minute, Wibble, you shouldn't have to change after 4 cards, you should have to change after 3 cards, and then it actually makes the game slightly better. Hey, Fable, that shouldn't be 5 bits in the middle, that should be 4 bits in the middle, or maybe even 3. Oh my gosh, maybe it still works with 3. And that's like, that can't help but happen. Yeah. So, Antoinette, people agree, you have been amazing. And games mean a lot to many of us. Really nice that your work has had a real benefit to your mental health. Thanks for talking about it. It's very important, especially in these times of social media and whatnot.
Oh, thank you. That's really, really nice. That's really nice. No, I'm very fortunate I found board games. One of the better choices I ever made. So, yeah, it's love. I'm terrible at those things, but yeah. It's good to find something you're passionate about and to try and to do it as much as you can.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I want to try and do a quick recap. We talked about posts. We talked about them being amazing. We talked about fry-ups and geographical differences. We talked about reviewers are presenting information. We didn't say, we decided to just talk about everyone. We're not defining what a reviewer is. That could be its own show. Honestly, like, I would love to have you on as a regular guest if you're willing. We talked about critiques versus opinions, reviewers versus fact sheets, aspirations versus obligations, to choose what you are doing and being careful about it. Talking about board games, doing what you say you will, being honest, timeliness, foreignness, having the negative obligations of the maximum time spent, having the boundaries, having the being... you said that you want to be insightful, to show it in its best light, and to be yourself. That's an obligation that you want to do, to not only be honest, but to be genuine and keep being who you are with all the people. And that is my recap. And we decided that playtesting is unavoidable, although maybe that's a conversation that Richard and I could have potential at some point in the future if Richard feels that there is a line to be drawn. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about in this recap?
No, I have nothing else to talk about in the recap. I did write you a little poem, though, because you do all your lovely singing at the start, and I can't sing, but I thought I'd write you a very small poem. So don't laugh, or maybe too hard. So it goes. If you want to have a chat or play a game that's full of cats, or race with words or balance cars, then Stuff by Bez will lead the charge.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. You did such lovely singing. I can't rhyme things like you can. That took me like hours.
Bye, Chris. And thank you so much, Antoinette.
No
That is super lovely. And we didn't get into relationships. And that's like got to be its own topic for sure.
Yeah,
like,
you had
can
a big
you
agenda.
be honest? Well, I would be happy for you to chat. That's the point of these chats. They're meant. So to wrap up, thank you. That has been the most lovely thing. And so I want to pop in. Oh, I've not actually been on Twitch at all. Thank you, Xate, for being the most amazing moderator that I have ever known. Thank you, Alan Outson and Alex, for popping in. And thank you, Jess. It's lovely to see you. Clever Unicorn Games, Maya, J-Full, Rowan, everyone, Prey, Chris, Richard, Oliver, anyone that I missed, I'm sorry. But thank you everyone for watching. And yeah, I want to say thank you most importantly to Antoinette.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. It was a delight. Oh,
As we finish up, as opposed to just wrapping up, the places that you can find me are stuffabeds.com, stuffabeds.bigcartel.com to buy my stuff, twitter.com/stuffabeds, where I tweet a lot, which is my most communicative, instagram.com/stuffabeds, which is things I'm working on, things I'm making, or pretty things around in the world, twitch.tv/stuffabeds for the streaming, facebook.com/things by Bez is a thing, and stuffbybez@gmail.com. And so if people want to find you, where do you most like to be found?
So I'm at Board Game Inquisition on Facebook. I'm at BGI Inquisition. Well, BGI, yeah, Inquisition. On Twitter. Also, I'm on YouTube. You should totally search me up because that would be convenient. And come and see if you like what I do. I'm forever begging for subscribers.
Sorry, some of them were cut off. I should have copy pasted it from the thing. If you go to Facebook or YouTube, then it will not be cut off.
Okay, there you go.
It will be cut off in the text, but the hyperlink will still be correct because that's the way that hyperlinks work on certain websites.
No problems.
And so that is that. And yeah, thank you very much. And as I said, I invite everybody to say quickly what they are looking forward to. What are your hopes and ambitions? What are you looking forward to? Hopes and ambitions. It's over to you for this final section. I am personally hoping to get some postage done and hopefully some legal stuff finished today. I will see if I can do this. It has been a big ordeal this week. And finally, I am going to go to a store to get my laptop repaired because there are some issues with the buttons, and we will see if that can go. So that is what I'm hoping for. What are you hoping for?
The weekend. I'm just glad the week's over. Yay! Aww. This is the first weekend in a long time I don't have a review game I have to play, so I can just play my own games. So that's lovely.
And just like Clever Unicorn Names, thank you very much. And enjoy your time away, Alan. And I hope that everyone has something to kind of be able to relax or be able to take some time for themselves and be able to have a little bit of joy in the upcoming days. If you have enjoyed this and you think it's worth watching for other people when it's not live, then feel free to share, spread the word. The next streams, oh my gosh, I've not prepared this bit.
Oh no, I your obligations.
To so it's easiest if I'm just going to show myself going to Twitter and then go to my page, which is twitter.com/stuffbybez, and then there will be a little link when it loads, which is a Google Calendar, which will tell you what all my next things are.
Excellent.
And my next couple is going to be firstly doing a self-check-in tomorrow, which that's where I just talk about myself, talk about the stream and how I'm feeling and whether, for how long I would like to continue, because it's got to the point where I need to start thinking a way ahead, because look at this, I've got like basically all of September pretty much spoken for. And then I'm going to be talking about Deductible with Chris Bocke and some other stuff. And this is all like on the Google Calendar. You can see that all. But that is not what we're all about right now. There is only one thing left to do. And yeah. Oh, that sounds like something very much to look forward to. Enjoy Glastonbury.
Yay.
And so, do you have anything left to say before we say bye-bye?
No, this has been the longest goodbye ever.
I am not very good at saying quick goodbyes. I'm sorry.
It's all right. It's a talent.
It's a learnable skill. Or maybe it's a talent to draw out the goodbyes and still make it entertaining.
Exactly. Yes. You go. I know. Oh, all right.
It's been a big topic. Bye, bye,
Cool.
bye,
Bye.
bye. This is
Bye.
a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye-bye.
Bye.